Did you say Jack Davis?
He hoped he had misheard Mr. White. If it really was the officer from the Department of Education, then no wonder he had asked for the university's chancellor to be called.
Yes. Have you met him? Foolish little man, isn't he? How dare he come in here throwing his weight around? By the way, I've already asked the security guard to take him away. Do you want me to call the police as well?
What? No.
The professor signaled for Mr. White to step closer.
Don't expel Damon.
He urged in a stage whisper. Seeing the blank look on his colleague's face, he added,
There's no time to explain. You just have to trust me on this.
He started to turn to make his escape, but was stopped in his tracks by a syrupy greeting.
Well, if it isn't my favorite lecturer, the lovely Professor Baleford. Always a pleasure to see you.
Having not paid attention previously to the new arrival outside the office, Mr. Davis's interest was piqued by mention of the academic's name. He crossed the room toward him and shook him by the hand, holding it firmly as he spoke.
Any friend of this young man is a friend of mine.
The professor forced his face into a smile, inwardly cursing. Damon looked at him with a pronounced downward turn of the mouth.
Well, I thought we were friends at least. I've certainly always looked up to you. But now I'm told you want to kick me out of the university. Why would you want to do that?
Mr. Davis withdrew his hand quickly, and the room fell silent. Mr. White glanced from one man to the other.
What's going on? Who is this man? Why is Charles just standing there with his mouth hanging open? Does this mean that this man isn't one of Damon's relatives?
He wondered.
It's all a complete misunderstanding, Mr. Davis.
Professor Baleford's tone was almost unrecognizable as his own, as he hastily pleaded with the official.
This is just a trivial matter. There's no need for the Department of Education to get involved, and certainly not someone of your standing. We can sort this out.
What did he say?
Mr. White cursed himself for his stupidity.
Standing? This man's from the education department? He's effectively my boss, and I threatened to call the police to take him away. What have I done?
He thought.
Mr. Davis, sir, it's like Professor Baleford said.
It was his turn to plead.
It really is just a huge misunderstanding.
Tears started rolling down his face as the meaning behind Damon's words hit him.
Let's see who can get expelled first.
And now the tables are turned. Damon's clearly on good terms with this man Davis. A word from him and it'll be me who gets fired.
He sank to his knees with a thud and grabbed Damon's trousers.
Damon, honestly, it's all just a huge misunderstanding. I didn't want to expel you. I don't have that kind of authority here. You know that, don't you? This is all his doing.
He shot a look in the direction of Professor Baleford.
How dare you? Haven't I always treated you well? Why are you trying to shift the blame for this mess onto me?
Damon watched, amused, as the two academics bickered like teenage siblings.
Enough!
Mr. Davis stepped between them with his palms raised.
Stop this play acting and pack your things. There's no place for people like you in the education system. Not on my watch.
Professor Baleford's knees buckled.
No, this can't be happening. I need this job. I have my 70-year-old mother to care for, as well as my wife and child.
He thought.
Damon,
he cried, throwing himself on the mercy of the student.
I was wrong. I see that now. Give me a chance. Let me make amends. I can apologize to you in front of the whole school if that's what it takes. Just don't let them fire me from my job. I beg you.
Damon left the room without a backward glance. Damon and Mr. Davis talked as they walked. The more he listened to the student, the more impressed the education official became. He had had plenty of dealings with wealthy people in the course of his career at the department, but had always found them to be more interested in boosting their own social status rather than benefiting others. Damon's investment in the university had been a refreshing change. In addition to providing subsidies for the poorer students, he had further, grander plans in mind. Meanwhile, outside the building housing the offices of the teaching staff, a crowd of students had gathered, attracted by the commotion and the promise of more entertaining gossip. Alicia was lurking by the entrance, desperate to be first to learn the outcome, but keen to avoid arousing suspicion about her relationship with Professor Baleford. Having seen Damon leave the building with a man she didn't recognize, Alicia had assumed that he must have been expelled. But she was starting to get concerned at the continued absence of the professor.
You did the right thing, Alicia,
said a student who had been at the badminton courts earlier.
He's had it coming for a long time.
She beamed, soaking up the praise.
Yeah, he needed to be taken down a peg or two.
At the sound of footsteps heading down the stairs, she looked up.
Charlie, Professor Baleford.
In her delight at seeing him, and caught up, as usual, in her own world, she failed to notice his downcast expression and weary gait. Stopping herself short of throwing her arms around him as he approached, she raised her face to his with an eager smile and wide, bright eyes. Without speaking and barely looking at her, the professor pushed her roughly aside. Alicia burst into tears. For the second time in one day, she'd been manhandled. And this time, it was made worse because it was someone she cared for, and who she thought cared for her in return. Gone was the tenderness he had shown toward her only minutes beforehand. She opened her mouth to protest, but was cut off when he whipped his head around and snarled at her.
Get out of my sight.
She had never heard him speak in such sharp tones.
I don't ever want to see you again. I can't believe I allowed you to seduce me. I have a wife and a child. Did you ever think about them?
Alicia sat down on the ground, tears streaming down her cheeks. The crowd of students who had come to see the cause of the earlier commotion went away with far more juicy gossip than they could have hoped for.
Alicia and the professor? Who knew?
No wonder she struts around like she owns the place.
Professor Cradle Snatcher!
Yeah, if he gets such a kick out of playing with students, why didn't he kick Damon out sooner?
The news soon spread throughout Hillwood University. After talking with Mr. Davis, Damon went to the university canteen to meet Melanie, as promised. He overheard snatches of conversations along the way.
Hasn't he been expelled yet?
No, but did you hear about Alicia doing the dirty with Professor Baleford? I never had her down as that kind of girl.
Damon's no better. No sooner had he been dumped by Jessica than he was dating Tiffany. But he couldn't keep her happy, so he went after Melanie. Those two losers are welcome to each other.
Oh, I don't know. The only problem Melanie's got is that she can't talk. At least she's pretty.
Good point. I wonder what she sees in him then.
Maybe she's still a virgin.
Spotting Melanie, Damon sat beside her. She looked away.
Do you get comments like those a lot?
Melanie bit her lip and looked down at her plate. Looking over at Damon and his lack of a tray, she pushed the plate toward him. She pointed to the food and then brought the fingers of her right hand together and moved them, fingertips first, toward her mouth, tapping them twice on her lips.
Are you offering to share?
She nodded.
Thank you. The food here is delicious. Good choice, by the way.
Damon smiled and helped himself to a mouthful.
My treat next time. What do you say?
Melanie held his gaze, a single tear escaping and trickling down her cheek. She wiped it away.
What's wrong? Have I crossed the line? You really don't have to go out for a meal with me if you don't want to. It's okay. I understand if you're not interested in me that way. I was really just hoping we could be friends.
Melanie made a fist with her right hand, mimed knocking it twice in front of her, then flattened her palm and made a circular motion across the center of her chest. Seeing the puzzlement on Damon's face, she nodded enthusiastically and brightened to see the smile spread across his face.
All right then. I'll wait for you here tomorrow. We can have breakfast together. And the day after that if you like.
Melanie beamed.
From now on, I'll wait for you here every morning. Friends?
Melanie nodded, then tapped her right index finger across her left and reversed the move. Damon felt, rather than heard, the mood of the canteen shift. He turned his head to look toward the door and saw someone slowly walking in, attracting the attention of the diners.
Oh, has Mr. Hemsworth decided to eat in the canteen?
Enzo sneered as he approached.
And who is your delightful dining companion this time?
Why do you care who I choose to eat with?
Oh, I don't care one bit.
Enzo said in a lazy drawl.
I'm just curious to see how this person has ruined Tiffany's birthday party, not to mention the reputation of the whole Vandergilt family. Can just carry on as if nothing happened. Doesn't it bother you at all that her family is a mess because of you? I guess not. Go on.
He continued, sarcasm dripping from his voice.
You enjoy your cozy meal here. What a great person you are.